please welcome Peter Yang, Harry B. from Voldex, Abstract Alex from Twin Atlas, and Chief Wilden from Sawhorse Interactive to the stage.
All right. All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our session on how to use analytics to grow and improve your experience. My name is Peter. I am the product lead for Creator Analytics at Roblox. I'm very lucky today to be joined by three amazing creators. Henry, do you want to start with intros?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I'm Harry. I'm head of growth here at Voldex. I've been with Voldex for about 2 years. I've been in gaming for about a decade. At Voldex, we work on three main titles: Driving Empire, the #1 driving game; Dungeon Quest, #1 dungeon crawler; as well as Ultimate Football, the #1 football game.
I'm Abstract Alex Hicks, the co-founder of Twin Atlas. Been on Roblox since 2009, so well over half my life at this point. And we'll be talking about some of the games that we work on as well.
And I'm Michael Dougal. I'm one of the technical directors at Sawhorse Interactive. Also been on the platform since 2009. And yeah, just overseeing the development of all of our projects over there.
Cool. All right, so here's what we're planning to do today. I'll start by sharing some exciting product updates on analytics, and then we'll spend most of the time diving into real tactics that our top creators use to improve engagement, monetization, and acquisition for their games. So our vision for analytics is to guide every creator to take the most important actions to grow their creations. And we've been really busy shipping this year. Recently, we launched a brand new experience overview page that gives you one place to see the most important insights and benchmarks for your experience. So for example, if this was your game, you can see that there's room to improve on your average session time and your day one retention. So you should probably focus on improving those metrics to grow faster. But how do you actually know how to improve these metrics? Well, that's where our new funnel and economy analytics come in. For example, if you track your onboarding funnel, you might see that most of the drop-off is happening in step 2. So improving that step will likely improve your retention and your engagement and help you grow faster on Roblox. We've also heard loud and clear that you want to be able to track any kind of event out there. And we've been hard at work on this feature, and I'm excited to share that we will deliver custom events to all creators in just a few weeks. All right. Last but not least, you've been complaining about this for probably over a year. You've been telling me and everyone else at Roblox that you really want to A/B test your thumbnails. But we think we built something even better than that. We call it thumbnail personalization. All you have to do is upload a few thumbnails for your experience, and we will automatically show the best thumbnail to the right user. And you can also see all the different metrics per thumbnail, including which segment performs the best for that thumbnail. So we're really hard at work on this feature, and we hope to deliver it in a month or two. Soon we will launch a beta, and you're all invited to sign up. All right, now let's get to the heart of the matter. How exactly do you get discovered on Roblox? Well, it really comes down to engagement or playtime, monetization or revenue, and acquisition or qualified plays. A qualified play is when a user clicks on your experience and joins it and actually sticks around for a few minutes or does some sort of engagement as opposed to leaving right away. And you can see here all of these input metrics that contribute to engagement, monetization, and acquisition. So again, look at your new experience overview page, monitor how you compare with similar experiences on these metrics, and focus on the ones that are below benchmark. That's how you can get discovered and grow on Roblox. All right, now let's dive into the most important category, engagement. If you just remember one thing from this session, make it about how important it is to retain new users. For example, if your average session time and day one retention are below benchmark, then you should really track and fix drop-off points in your onboarding funnel. You can also use funnels to track and improve user progression by giving players clear goals to work towards and also balancing the difficulty and the fun. All right, now here's Harry to share a real example of how improving onboarding supercharged his game.
Good. Thanks, Peter. All right. Great. How's everybody doing? Having a good RDC? Yeah. Nice. Happy to hear it. So I'd love to walk you through a real-world example of how we improved retention and playtime on Dungeon Quest. Dungeon Quest is a dungeon crawler that's been on Roblox for 7 or 8 years now. We acquired the game mid-2023, and this year, from all the initiatives that we worked on, it's actually nominated for a Roblox Innovation Award for Best RPG. So shout out to the Dungeon Quest team. Nice. So what we do here at Voldex when we acquire games, operate games, is we look at the analytics behind the game. What's happening? What are the players doing? Where are they dropping off? So this is a great segue into the product that Peter was talking about. So when we acquired Dungeon Quest, we saw that the first step of the funnel, which is users actually getting to the game, they were having a really tough time. About 25% of users couldn't get into the game from pressing the play button to getting in. It was just simply taking too long. The next step is users actually playing a dungeon. It's being Dungeon Quest, that's the core loop of the game. And users, they couldn't play it. They didn't know how to find it. They didn't know how to start a dungeon. So we saw 60% drop off in users from pressing the play button, getting in, to starting a dungeon. And then if users can't start a dungeon, then guess what? They can't finish a dungeon. 70% of users couldn't finish their first dungeon in the game. So these were some really, really large friction points that we knew we had to address. So next up was fixing those drop-off points. So the first thing we did was fix the load times. We removed any unnecessary loading of images or content that a user didn't see during their first session. So we made it faster for users to load into the game. The next step was getting users to start the dungeon. So we changed the onboarding flow. We made a new guided tutorial for them to understand how to actually start that dungeon and get into the game. And this is something that we've seen in mobile games. I've been in mobile games for 10 years, and we thought that it could work on Dungeon Quest, and I'm glad that it did. And finally, when users got into the dungeon, we updated the experience. We refreshed the dungeon. We made it more modern. We adjusted with the flow of the dungeon itself, different enemies. We made it a bit easier for users to complete the first time so they could actually get through it and enjoy the content. So those were the 3 big initiatives that we focused on. And one thing that's really important to us, before we deploy anything into the game, I won't say anything, but a lot of initiatives, we make sure to test things. We A/B test things. So kind of what Peter was talking about in terms of testing thumbnails, we do this with content in the game. And we do it for 3 main reasons. First, to make sure we don't break anything. Second, to make sure that we reduce any external noise. And third, to make sure we find the ideal configuration. So from this test, we can see the blue line, which is users not having an onboarding. It was at about the 35 to 40% rate that I shared before of users starting starting the first dungeon. When we look at the 2 other configurations we put together, we have the yellow line, which was users having the full tutorial, and then the red line, users actually teleporting into the dungeon. And we saw that the users teleporting directly in had the best impact on the game. So that's the configuration that we went with. And what did all this net out to? A 40% boost in day 1 retention, which was huge. It was huge for the game. It was huge for surfacing on the platform. And it was a great initiative. So we see that users that survive their first day, they have a much higher likelihood of coming back on day 1. So that's what I want to share about Dungeon Quest. And now I'll pass it over to Michael.
Thank you, Harry. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about some brand work that we did on Walmart Discovered, which is another Roblox Innovation Award nominated game, and we're super thankful for that. One of the things that you may know about working with brands, or may not, is that you typically work towards very specific KPIs that they put forward. As a brand, they have interests that may differ from what you're used to as a regular experienced developer trying to make a living for yourself. So in our first phase of Walmart Discovered, we really focused on their KPIs and getting this world out to users and showing them everything that Walmart had to offer the community. But there was room for improvement. You can see up on the slides there that the world was very colorful and engaging and bright, and it was a really great looking world that our artists designed. But as we started to analyze the experience and some of the analytics, we could see that we needed to improve our average session times. We were at an average of about 3.8 minutes, and it was much lower than the benchmarks for everything else on the platform. So we decided to dive into that. And in order to optimize it, we started following the user journey. And that's a pattern that you'll see as we talk about some of these experiences. It's even something that Harry just shared with us a minute ago, is the most important way to, or the most effective way to get in and start figuring out how you're going to improve these analytics is just follow what your average user does. So when we got in there and we checked that out, we decided most of these guys are saying the world is just too confusing. They're too overwhelmed by everything that's going on. It's not very clear where to go or what to do. So we needed to fix that. So in our phase 2 update of Walmart Discovered this last June, we did a couple of redesigns of several key points in the world. The first one was the spawn location. In the previous version, we'd spawn them in a little box room because we didn't want them to get overwhelmed, but we found that closed them in and they couldn't figure out how to get out of that. So we opened it up, we put everything right around that spawn point. You can see a little glowing bridge there that led them right over to where our glide and seek game was at. And this new design helped push them towards all of these core loop mechanics that we had set up and were in the game, but they weren't necessarily engaging with. Other systems, such as the mini games, we evolved to be a lot more immersive and expansive and replayable. The mini games in the first version were something that you only got into when a little UI popped up, and it just wasn't very clear on how to get into that. So we saw a huge boost. You can see that up there on the graph that our 3.8 minute streak there, and then right when the update came out, you can see a clear increase in users just engaging with the experience in general, and then kind of the way that it averages out over there. It led to 110% average session time increase. And in mini games alone, we saw an average time of people going from 2 minutes in mini games to now 32 minutes per user on average in our new glide and seek game. So that's really what we wanted to focus on, was like just follow that user right from the instant that they get into the game. Where do they go? What do they do? Where do they drop off? And how can we fix that, or how can we change our world in order to make sure that they're getting the most out of it? And now I'll pass it over to Alex.
All right. So at Twin Atlas, we develop a lot of games from the ground up, which means it's very important to use data to actually validate that what we think is going to happen in our games is going to happen. So here you can see some of the onboarding funnel, identifying an obvious drop-off. Those guys have done a great job kind of highlighting why that's important. So I want to dig into some more game-specific examples of where that you can look at the data and figure out if what you think is happening is actually happening. Okay, so in Swordburst 3, we released a feature called the Void Tower. Nice picture of it over there. When we first released this, the idea was that you would clear floors in the tower, and every 10 floors, you would unlock a reward. So the problem is we started tracking how many floors people were doing. You can see in this graph over here, it looks like a staircase. Not good. So what we hypothesized was that, okay, to collect the rewards, you actually have to leave the tower. That's how we developed it. And we thought people would just, play through the tower, do 30, 40 floors, and then they would leave and collect those rewards. That's not what happened. As you can see in the data, people were immediately leaving the second they unlocked that reward to collect it. So way to fix that, let people actually collect the rewards within the tower, and you can see we got a much smoother drop-off there. So that's kind of an example of how you can amplify the effect of a feature that you've made using that data. Another example, so let's say you have a game like an MMORPG. Swordburst 3 is an open world RPG in this case. So we have players that can be level 1 all the way up to past level 100. So when we're designing an update for the game, we want to know, are we building a new piece of content for 10 players who are at max level? So tracking the percentage of our daily active users that are at the max level kind of lets us figure out where our audience actually is in the game. So once we tracked this data, we found 75% of our daily active users were at max level already. So that means if we were adding content to the middle of the game or improving the first-time user experience, that was not going to be impactful for those users. So it's really important just to understand where your audience is spread out, especially if you have a large game. And I'll pass it back over to Peter to talk about monetization.
All right. Thanks, Alex. All right, let's talk about monetization. So it's really important to realize that your in-game economy drives your monetization. So if your payer conversion rate or your average revenue per paying user are below benchmark, then chances are something is wrong with your economy. For example, if your sources exceed your sinks and your average wallet balance for your players is ever increasing, then users are gaining currency faster than they can spend it. So what you want to do maybe is to add more items for them to buy or improve the shop UX to make it easier for them to purchase those items. It's also a good idea to launch themed items and first-time purchase bonuses with your major events and content updates to ride the hype. All right, now here's Harry again to talk about real tactics to improve monetization.
Cool. Thank you, Peter. Great. So let's go back to Dungeon Quest. They had 2 monetization efforts that worked really well this year. The first one increased paying user conversion rate by 180% on a user's first day in the game. The second improved average revenue per daily active user by 20% across the user base. Huge initiatives, massive, massive initiatives. So the first one was personalized offers. So prior to putting them into the game, they did not exist. Personalized offers are something that we know works, again, in mobile games, customized to a user at the right point, at the right time, with the right offer. So these didn't exist in the game. When we put them into the game, it increased conversion rate by 180%. And this is what it looked like. And what are they? So we gave users content. We gave them a reason to buy before they started any dungeon inside of the game. So before the first dungeon, second dungeon, third dungeon, we gave them content that was applicable to them for all of the different classes in the game. And we also made it time limited, so we put a little bit of a time pressure on them to make that decision. So this initiative, as I mentioned, increased paying user conversion rate on the first day of users in the game by 180%, which was huge. Now, the second initiative, we improved the store layout. Peter just talked about improving the UX inside the store. We did this inside of Dungeon Quest. And yes, here's the old shop. It wasn't great. It was a little bit outdated. It had this ongoing sale with 40% off for about 8 months. And we knew that there could be a lot that could be improved there. So what did we do? I'll just click through. So here you can see the store. Updated UI, much more visually appealing. We made a scrolling store with quick access points on the left side. We created rotating offers inside of it. We surfaced the daily reward, which also had a respin option inside of it. We surfaced the personalized offers within it, and a lot more went into that. And as I mentioned, the revamped store provided an uplift of 20% in terms of average revenue per user. And Dungeon Quest isn't the only game that we've revamped the store on and seen success. We also did it in Dungeon Quest about a year ago, in Driving Empire, about a year ago, and saw a strong average revenue per user uplift as well. So this is definitely low-hanging fruit that you should certainly look to leverage. Great. And now I'll throw it over back to Alex. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so talking about events. So in World Zero, we did an event called the Dragon Boss event, and we wanted to maximize how well this did. So first thing, kind of like I was just talking about before, in an MMO or any game where your players can be at a wide variety of places in the game, it was important that we made sure every player could participate. So if you're a brand new user at level 1 or you're a player at max level, you can still play this event and it will apply to you. So with the event, we added a bunch of cosmetics as well, so a bunch of new items that players wanted to obtain. And on top of that, we upgraded our premium shop to have a one-time bonus for every single tier of premium currency. So the very first time you purchase that, you would get that bonus. This essentially turned it into a checklist type mini game where we saw a lot of our paying users went out of their way to buy tiers that they wouldn't have usually purchased just because they wanted to claim that one-time bonus. So this was a great strategy for us. You can see we saw a huge uplift in our revenue. And then throughout the duration of the event, a 50% boost for 2 weeks afterwards. So that was really successful. And then looking at player wallets, this is also hugely important. If there's anything you take away from this part of the monetization, it's that you do not want your players to be overly rich. So when we did our event, we saw tons of premium currency being generated. And it was really important that we tracked our players' wallet to make sure that wasn't just going straight up. Because if it was, that would mean that our players are getting a ton of currency. And the next time we do an event, we're not going to see that monetization kick in because they're already going to have tons of funds to dump into it. So fortunately, we did not see that. we saw a huge spike in the amount of currency being generated, as you can see on the pink graph. And then underneath that, the green shows you that that was all being sunk back into the event. So that's what a healthy event looks like. Even better if you can reduce your player wallet, because that means that you're just sinking more currency that players have saved up from previous events as well. And I'll pass it back to Peter to talk about acquisition.
Thanks. All right, guys, sorry you guys have to clap so much, but yeah. So our last category is acquisition. And as you may have guessed, we talked about already, better engagement drives better discovery. So the most important thing that you can do to help your game get discovered on Roblox is actually just to get users into the fun as quickly as possible after they join your game. Remember, a qualified playthrough rate is a percent of users who engage and stay in your experience as opposed to leaving right away. And of course, it's still really important to test different thumbnails and icons, especially with new updates, and monitor their impact on your qualified playthrough rate. Hand it back to Alex, talk about testing thumbnails and icons.
Thank you. OK, so Roblox has thumbnails and icons. Which should you prioritize? Which should you care about more? So right now on Roblox, you'll see thumbnails in places like today's picks, recommended. So that means new users are typically seeing your thumbnails. Whereas icons, you'll see in places like continue playing, sponsored, push notifications, friends, etc. So it's really important to think about this, because if you get a new user who likes your thumbnail and they come back the next day and they see an icon and they don't associate that with your thumbnail, you could lose a play. So it's really important to make sure that both of those are taken care of. And then make sure that you don't just rush one of them. We'll see a lot of the time people will make a really nice thumbnail, and then they will try to squish that into an icon and just call it a day. You don't really want to do that. You want to make sure that both of them are as effective as possible. So taking a look at Swordburst 3, we had two thumbnails here. The one on top was not performing too well. Reasons for that is there's just too much going on in the scene. There's no clear focus what you should be looking at. So we updated that to have one with a much clearer focus. Giant worms were popular at the time, so we kind of leveraged pop culture there, and we saw a huge uplift with that. So that improved our click-through rate, and then you can see that led to many more users being recommended to our game. So not only is it important to just look good, but the algorithm will reward you if players think your icons and thumbnails look good as well. And now I'll pass it back to Harry.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Alex. Great. So one more example for you guys, this time from Ultimate Football. And actually, I wish we had time to update the slides. Yesterday, we just signed with the NFL, and the game is going to be totally rebranded, and it's now going to be called NFL Universe Football. So super exciting. Congrats to everyone at Voldex. Yeah. Awesome. So this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I've been in performance marketing for 12 years now, and on Roblox, testing creatives has a lot of opportunity to provide growth for your game. So we acquired Ultimate Football earlier this year, and one of the first things that we did was start testing thumbnails for the game. We worked with Roblox on this initiative as well with the personalized thumbnails, and it's something that we have a lot of experience doing, as I mentioned. So since I started here at Voldex, I've been working with our marketing specialist, Ellie, and our marketing artist to run a ton of tests. And when I say a ton of tests, I mean a ton of tests. So when we ran this test with Roblox, we gave them 6 thumbnails. And I've indexed them on a scale to show the lowest performance to top performing. And you can see here that the first thumbnail that we tested had a factor of 1.0. The second thumbnail, 1.15. The third thumbnail, all the way up to the 6th thumbnail, increasing in efficiency and increasing in converting users to the highest rate of 2.5x stronger than the weakest thumbnail. And this is huge because the more users you convert, the more users get into your game. And as Alex mentioned, and as Peter mentioned, the more users you're converting, the stronger of a signal it is to Roblox and the algorithm, and the more impressions you are blessed with. We like to call it blessed with impressions and surfacing. So what was the impact of this strong thumbnail? And the thumbnail is super cool with the red player card with the stats behind it, really, really cool. The impact of this thumbnail, you can see before, during the testing period, we had a stable amount of impressions while the test was going on. We deployed the thumbnail, and then all of a sudden we saw an increase in impressions on the platform. So once again, we're talking about it now. That that QPTR, that qualified playthrough rate, super, super important. Test your creatives, use the tools that are coming from Roblox because it could make a really big impact for your experience. Great, and I'll throw it over to Michael.
Thanks again, Harry. Okay, so going back to Walmart Discovered for a second, I talked about our update. I talked about a couple of things that we did to improve our engagement. And now I want to talk a little bit about the way that we marketed this to take advantage of the algorithm and to get some attention from that. So you can see here, and I've removed the numbers for brand data privacy, but you can see the spike on the orange line of where we started our marketing campaign, which was right when our update dropped. So we had done our testing. We knew that this was going to be more engaging. We knew that this was really positive for the experience. And so we wanted to make sure we got as many people in there as possible so that they could see the updates and improvements and engage with it. And so we did a big ad spend, and then you can start to see the effect that it had. So notice that these are on different days. We did our big ad spend, and then on the back end, Roblox's algorithm is able to see that, start tracking it, process it, and then you can start to see our recommendations start to go up. That's because we improved our engagement times and our qualified playthrough rates were going up as well. The other thing to note is that a large marketing spend like this can also prioritize your game in terms of the initial pool of games that the algorithm looks at to send out recommendations. So it's highly recommended that if you guys have an update that you're pushing out and you know it's going to be a big change, make sure you accompany that with a large marketing spend so that you can also take advantage of that prioritization. And now I'll hand it back to Peter.
All right, everyone, so let's wrap up. To grow your experience, focus on engagement, monetization, and acquisition in roughly that priority order. To grow engagement, make your game fun for users to return to by improving user onboarding and user progression. To grow monetization, help users invest in your game by balancing your economy and launching new items with your content updates. And finally, to grow acquisition, attract new users by getting them into the fun quickly after they join your game and testing different thumbnails and other assets. Thank you all for coming. And now we have a few minutes to answer any questions you may have.
All right, we got one.
I have a question for Michael with the Walmart branding. Do you have to set expectations with them that there will be iterations and there will be improvements, or do they see your initial numbers and kind of freak out and then you've got to talk them off the ledge? How do you kind of deal with that?
I'm fortunate to say that we've never really had to talk many people off of the ledge, but you're correct. Yeah, when you're working with a brand, oftentimes you will set expectations in the beginning and say, hey, this is roughly the number of users that we expect. Our marketing team is fantastic in that they generally have a good handle on certain ad spends in certain locations or with certain users will generate an estimated amount of users. So we're able to accurately predict that for them with some of the data that we have, and we've been able to deliver on that. So yeah. Cool.
Yep.
Hey, so in the finishing thoughts, you made it kind of come off as this is the order: engagement, monetization, acquisition. So I'm just wondering, shouldn't monetization be last, or what's the thought process behind monetization being in the middle rather than at the end, where it's the reward you reap for good engagement and acquisition?
Yeah, I think this is the rough order, just in my opinion, because I think it's really important to have strong engagement, because if people are just leaving from your game right off the bat, you're not going to have a chance to monetize them. And if you're focused on acquisition without strong retention or engagement, you're growing like a leaky bucket, right? Once you have strong engagement, then it's important to think about how players can actually invest more in your game through monetization. And then, of course, you need to drive top of funnel growth. I'm sure the experts here know more, but no?
I think you answered it pretty well. They're all pretty important. Like you said, you can't monetize users if they don't think they're going to stick in your game long term. I think if they see a lot of fun ahead of them, they'll be more likely to make that purchase. So in terms of ranking them, I don't say I have a ranking either, but I think at the end of the day, engagement, a fun game, that's the most important.
Got it. Thank you.
Hello. My question's pretty vague, but I was just wondering if any of you guys have noticed if any of the criterias have more of an impact than others, or if they all weighted very equally, I guess. So.
Great question. We've seen different KPIs move the needle in different ways, and I think what's the most impactful is if you are sitting below a benchmark for any given KPI, whether it's retention, playtime, monetization, or user acquisition, or QPTR rate, if you go to where the benchmark is, within that band or the top of the benchmark, you will start seeing more surfacing on the platform, and that'll be a really important signal for the algo. If you're already at the top of the band and you improve it even more so, I think the impact will be less in terms of more surfacing for you. So if you're below the 50th percentile in any of these metrics that Peter's highlighting, getting above the 50th percentile will likely move your metrics the most.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Aibugo. Oh, Bruno, as known as Aibugo. I'm from Brazil, and I know all the metrics are important, but which one is the most important for you guys, like the special one?
I would say that, I mentioned engagement, I think is very important, but I would also really prioritize your click-through rate. I've seen a lot of fantastic games that just have a horrible icon or thumbnail, and they could be getting, I'm not even kidding, up to 4 times the amount of people recommended by the algorithm. So people who are neglecting their thumbnails and whatnot, even if they have a fantastic game behind the hood, you could be getting 4 times, 5 times as many players put into your game. And so even if your retention isn't great, retaining that percentage of 5 times the users is still much bigger. So that's what I would highlight, yeah.
And if I could add on to that, I think it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. All 3 of these sections are interconnected. They're not, the more that you get people to engage, the more people you'll have to monetize, the more that you retain, the more people you'll engage. And so it depends on where your experience is struggling, and the teams down at the booths have been fantastic in terms of providing insights for that. But also the thing that Peter was showing at the beginning with the overview of just the lines showing you where you stand against everybody else. Those are great things to pay attention to in general.
Okay, thank you.
I'll add one more thing for Bruno, right? Yeah. I look at ultimately those factors, also what pays the bills, right? So monetizing users is extremely important because that makes you a successful business. In the world where immersive ads exist, then it doesn't matter if they're monetizing through in-game purchases, because you can monetize through ads. So if you're ad heavy, let's say, then you want DAO in the game, you want users there. So retention, engagement, super important. If you don't have immersive ads and you're monetizing through in-game purchases, then monetization is a super important lever for you to pull, because that pays the bills. Yeah.
Hey guys, thanks for the talk. I was curious, you mentioned personalized offers earlier.
Yep.
Could you expand on that a little bit, how you sort of use analytics to drive those?
Yeah, sure, happy to. So I'll go back to the mobile gaming world. I worked at a company called Playtika, and we're super advanced in terms of understanding our users' progression through our games, what their purchase behavior was, what type of items they used to select, and what we did, we surfaced the right offer to that user in terms of that. We called it a comfortable offer, which was essentially what they were used to buying or items or elements that they liked buying. So the Dungeon Quest team implemented it related to a character class that a user has chosen, related to their progression in the game, so what dungeon that they're on. So the offer that's there is super relevant to them in terms of where they are in the game and who they're using. So yeah, personalized to the user based on those factors: progression, character class, what they're doing inside of the game.
Hey guys, nice to meet you, and I appreciate your presentation. I'm Matthew from Indigo. Some of you might know me. I was really wondering, what can you say about thumbnails and overall icon degeneration? Because I think all of us understand that if you change an icon too often, at some point it can lead to to overall decreasing of the CTR. So what are your thoughts on that? About how often you can change it, as well as when you should change it in the first place?
Yeah.
I would say we typically try to do a change with our update, but we will monitor those metrics very closely, and if we see them dip off, then we will revert that. Now, when thumbnail personalization comes out, I think that's going to completely change the dynamic here, so my answer might not even apply in a month or two. But yeah, we just heavily monitor it. We don't update it more than once a week unless we see, we put in a new thumbnail on a Thursday or something. It's not performing too good by Friday. We want to get that out of there by the weekend.
Yeah, with personalization, and we're still working on it, but the idea is that, the algorithm is smart enough to just divert more traffic to the one that's performing the best. It's also possible that one thumbnail could be performing very well for a certain age group, but another one could be performing well for another age group. So that will be possible with this feature. You can have like 2 thumbnails live at once, as opposed to always switching 100% of traffic to one. Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Oh, you're back.
It's me again. So, as you said about monetization, so I have some games. They are like popular in Brazil, and we had some problem like people in Brazil don't used to buy Robux because they are kind of expensive there. So all my metrics of my games are good, but my monetization are really low. And how do you guys handle this, like in countries that people don't used to buy? How do you balance the price in your games?
I would just, not in terms of pricing, but I would really highlight localization here. So I don't know if it's necessarily possible to get people who might not have a lot to spend on games to spend more. But if you target demographics, very rich countries, then make sure your game's localized and tailored to those users as well as things like premium payouts. That would be my tip there, just to make sure that you're approaching a global audience rather than just one market.
And I'll plug a Roblox tool that they were talking about this morning. They talked about localization of prices in games. So let's see. Let's see if it works. Let's see how it does.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, thanks everyone. We'll probably hang out in the back a little bit outside if you won't have any questions, but thanks so much.